What is up, guys? NYKia31 here. This is going to be a video talking about Madden 21 and specifically talking about the live stream that Mr. Oldenburg and Kralo did last night, talking about feedback from the Madden closed beta. I participated in the Madden closed beta, played tons of games, left tons of feedback along with other people in the community as well. And you know how it rolls. You play the beta, you notice a whole bunch of bugs, you see what's working, see what's not, see what needs to be improved upon, leave your messages on the forums, and hope that as much stuff gets hit on as possible before the release of the game. And then we know how it rolls. Game comes out, some stuff still needs to be fixed, either a release day or a release week patch, and the whole cycle starts to go again. But as far as what we know right now, there was some pretty good information that was shared. I felt I was happy to see that they did acknowledge the hashtag Fixed Madden franchise movement early on in the presentation. We haven't really heard not really. We haven't heard much of anything since the initial wave of that and Sean Grady's brief little blurb. But they did announce that they're going to be doing or presenting more information. I believe they said mid-August as far as what their plans are for beefing up franchise mode in Madden 21. What they can do, I don't know. How much they can do, I don't know. But whatever their plans are, whatever they've thought of, we'll find out in a few weeks. I believe they said mid-August when they'll be doing another one of these deep dives / presentations on Twitch to discuss that. So we'll see what is up. So anyway, that's all we know in that regard. At least it's out there now. But as far as their beta feedback thoughts and what they've done, we'll take a look at that. Now, as far as what they discussed last night and reaction to community feedback from the beta, there was some good information. There are still some areas that are problematic. I mentioned in my beta impressions video, I included the link to that video in the description and in the comment section below if you haven't seen it. I went over what I liked and what I thought needed to be addressed. I thought there was some decent information there. What I would really have liked to have seen, though, was some in-game footage to supplement what they were talking about. I get that logistically that might be a little bit of a challenge right now, but still, it would really help a lot as far as seeing some visuals to what they were talking about. But as far as what they talk about here, additional gameplay features, celebration run mechanic on LT, L2, could not care less. I thought the in-game celebration menu was one of the more intrusive things that I've experienced in a video game. I want it gone. I don't care. Could not care less. Loss of precision modifier on L2, LT, L2. Meaning, steerable jukes and spins that were mapped to the triggers. Precision modifier was no longer necessary once we implemented the stick skill for ball carriers. All evasive ball carrier moves can now be naturally steered with less stick input, with the amount of steering scaled per each ball carrier's special move ratings. This basically reinforces the fact that the ball carrier stick moves is going to be a lot like the old skill stick that they used to have for pulling off those moves. Honestly, I liked the juke move and the spin move and truck modifiers of the trick. I didn't mind that at all. I don't like user automation, and this is what this feels like. Even in the days of the skill stick, you would move the stick and time your moves, and the ratings of the ball carrier will take over. That's fine and good, but I like being able to trigger stuff manually. I don't like this trend towards increased automation animation triggering. Let people that have superior timing and superior nimbleness on the sticks be able to use that to their advantage. There's too much leveling the playing field downward when it comes to user ability in these games. And Madden has been a really big culprit with things like ball hawk and all types of assists that that you're able to use to really narrow down the user skill gap when it comes to abilities, when it comes to the way the game animates and how it animates. I like I like manual control. As much manual control as I have, the better. Pre-play defensive adjustment updates. Because we've introduced a new defensive bat lock-on mechanic, which can be activated in pre-play, we needed to shuffle around the defensive pre-play mechanics to support it. Pressing LB L1 will now activate DB lock-on for you. Don't really get this change either. How is this any different than what we could do right now, where we can just simply click on the defender you want to use or cover with and just manually press and redirect the receiver with the right stick? I don't get why this change was necessary. It's not a huge one. It's just moving the input from one side of the controller to the other, but I didn't see a need for it. I don't understand why that was changed. Same thing here, DB lock on mechanic. How's this any different than what we can do now when we click on our defender and we're able to manually steer and press and cover the guy using a combination of the right stick and the left stick? Don't get it. Ball carrier archetype run styles. An additional feature of depth coming to Madden 21 via the skill stick system is the concept of ball carrier archetypes that directly impact the run cycle and special moves each player will use. Here's a quick breakdown of how this works based on ratings, height, and weight. This is interesting. They have ball carrier archetypes with different categories and subcategories: agile, agile small, agile tall, bruiser, bruiser quick, bruiser heavy. And what I find interesting about this is I'm thinking about this conceptually and tying in player movement, speed, agility, change of direction to be based off a combination of ratings, height, and weight. So not just physical attributes, or I should say physical athletic ability, but player build. Thinking about it as a guy who used to sprint, your velocity is tied to two things mainly: your stride frequency and your stride length. And different body types have a natural tendency to have different strengths and weaknesses in those areas. A smaller sprinter will have higher leg turnover, may not have the stride length of a bigger guy, even though both may reach, when they reach their top speed, be of equal or similar speed. Their acceleration will not quite be the same in some instances based off of their stride frequency and stride length. Think of, like, they use examples here like Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones. Different body types and different archetypes to reflect those body types and to reflect how their speed, agility, and acceleration play out. Again, this would have been a great segment to show a visual representation of how that would look in motion. Show me how Christian McCaffrey is running in the game as far as his stride, his ability to accelerate and change direction, in comparison to Tyreek Hill, in comparison to Julio Jones, with some in-game footage. Doesn't have to be that, deep or in depth, but just show me a visual, something that I could tie what you're saying to. And they mentioned here, bruiser, slower rate of turning, takes longer to change direction, slower evasive special moves on agile players, but more powerful power moves applied to skill positions and linemen with less than 80 agility and over 225 pounds. Example, C.J. Anderson. And this would make this would also include your Derrick Henrys. They actually mentioned Derrick Henry, Bruiser quick, similar to Bruiser, but guys who have a little bit more nimbleness to them. Derrick Henry, he's a big dude, but he's got pretty quick feet in the hole. Takes him longer to accelerate once he is in the open field, but once he gets going, he's a freight train. So again, I like how they're trying to separate body types. My question would be, outside of being able to see it visually, is does this translate to the defensive players and how they move? We got a little bit of an explanation of the change of direction rating and how it ties to user control and the ability to change direction with your user control player, which we'll get into when we go further down. But also, does that apply to the body type of user control defenders and how linebackers move in comparison to safeties, in comparison to defensive linemen, front four players, edge players, things of that nature. And segueing into this most upvoted feedback section, is the big elephant of the room: user on defense feeling slow and sluggish. To say that feedback was polarizing, I would say is very accurate. I would say that this is the number one thing that people on Twitter yesterday were freaking about the most: user control. And I can understand why. It's a very jarring change. It really is, because it's so drastic from anything that we've experienced with playing Madden before. I was on the First and Frame Rates podcast the other night with a virtual footballer, Bills, DJ. Also got a visit by OG, Mr. Scott O'Gallagher. Smitty was on there as well. And I mentioned that on that show yesterday, that I felt like I couldn't really compare it to anything. I couldn't really even compare it to All Pro Football 2K8's user, because I felt like it was more drastic than that. Simply put, based off of the beta, the days of freelancing with your user and buzzing around the field are gone. But there are some legitimate concerns. My main concern is the user speed being reflected properly, as in, if I'm controlling a fast defender, even in the beta, just simple forward movement felt slow. It felt like the entire defense was playing at a different speed than the offense. Although the offense felt much more freer in their movement in the open field and in general, the defense felt like it was moving at half speed. And even when I was controlling a fast player like Devin White on the Bucks, who has 90 speed and can accelerate and is agile, is one of the fastest linebackers in the entire game, just getting going with him in a straight line felt difficult. I have no problem with the change of direction aspect. I think that's a necessary change and a long overdue one. But I have to be able to have accurate straight line speed. If I'm using a fast player and I'm user covering a slow player and I'm running straight down the field with him, or a slower player, I should not be compromised. Now, if that slower player cuts and I don't read it, or my player has bad change of direction and he can't cut with him, that's fair game. And that's the concern that people are having, is that they don't feel like they have the ability to reach stuff. I got kind of comfortable with it after about a half dozen user-controlled games. I was able to make some plays here and there, but personally, I feel like it's a net positive. I feel like it's an evolution that the game has to take in order to play more fundamentally sound and more realistic. And I think it's something that people are going to ultimately have to find a way to adjust to, pending a couple of caveats, which I'll get into. But I get it. I get how it can be a drastic, jarring change. But again, what do people always complain about? We're always playing the same game year after year because of the way the game gets tuned. And when they try to do something different, people rebel against it, people freak out, and things end up getting changed. And what ends up happening? We're back playing the same thing, and it's just a vicious cycle. So while on one hand, I get the concerns, I do feel like that it's a the game needs to evolve forward. And I feel like this is a situation where, once again, assuming that we can move in ways that are accurate of our players' rating, I feel like it's a change that will make the game better. I don't think that it's a negative in the long run. It says here, as player ratings increase, the amount of ground a player can cover will also increase. As long as athletic players are able to be appropriately athletic, that's fine. The days of being able to cover a drag and then peel off to cover a 15-yard square in, those days need to end. Otherwise, how can you conflict the defenders? You won't be. You can't. It's just basic, common, football sense. Change back hurdle truck due to player feedback in the beta. We've changed the hurdle and truck button inputs back to the way they functioned previously. Players told us previous button mappings were more intuitive, felt like the new controller scheme was cumbersome to learn. I'd agree with that. I felt like, again, that going back to the whatchamacallit, the position modifier change and the DB lock-on mechanic, I felt like it was a change that was not necessary. So I'm okay with that. I don't have any problem as far as that's concerned. Now, again, this is going to tie in with the user control discussion as well. I feel like that will be a positive for the game, but only if these two areas are drastically improved. Players aren't reacting to the ball when thrown, both offense and defense. That was definitely a problem in the beta. Defensive players weren't bricking on the ball. On offense, there were some user input issues as well. And if I'm going to be forced to play more disciplined with my user, if what's going on around me has to be tighter. If someone throws away from my user and they throw into double coverage, if they make bad reads away from my user, those players have to be reacting appropriately, and they can only react appropriately if they're breaking on stuff as they should, again, based on the quality of the player, and if the coverage is tidy. Most of my beta feedback revolved around coverage bugs, and there were a lot of them. They mentioned here that they improved reaction times relative to breaking on the ball, which scales per defender's zone coverage or man coverage ratings in match zones. That's fine and good. There were all kinds of situations where defenders were getting left in the dust, even in two-man under on outside release fades, and wheels were an issue. And also just turning guys loose right off the line of scrimmage. There was all kinds of mess. This is a biggie as far as opening up the passing game and being able to make reads where you can trust what you see. And I didn't see anyone. No, I take that back. I saw one person on Twitter mention this. And this is very important. Added logic to modify break on ball reactions based on the facing direction of the defender. Meaning if he can clearly see the throw, he will break faster than when he cannot see the throw. Let me read that again. Meaning if he can clearly see the throw, he will break faster than when he cannot see the throw. Line of sight. Defenders should not be able to defend what they cannot see. Meaning if I'm running a sail concept or I'm running an outside streak and I'm running a inside corner route into that area, trying to run off that corner who was bailing out with that streak, with his back turned to the play, in phase with the receiver, cannot be peeling off to break on that corner route. Otherwise, it just ruins the point of the entire concept. You cannot attack coverage concepts with their corresponding coverage beater accurately if that kind of stuff is going to happen. Improve zone behavior for defenders with zone coverage abilities. Again, I'm more concerned about defenders and players in general without coverage abilities. I don't want to see a game where I have a guy with 95 zone coverage, but because he doesn't have some damn knockout ability, he doesn't do his job. Fix issues in cover 4 quarters and palms, causing zone defenders to react too much to play action. Um, Play action has to be viable somehow. I get you don't want to have overreaction, but again, things like play recognition and awareness should factor into this. Um, one of the points of a quarter scheme is that it involves safeties in the run fits, adding additional guys into the box while out of a too high structure. They are primary run fit defenders in a lot of situations. You got to be able to manipulate defenders with play action and ball fakes. Otherwise, it makes having play action plays in the game a waste of time. Fix the logic problems with quarter flat zones and appropriately matching vertical routes. Again, in the beta, there were issues as far as seam flats turning people loose and not matching vertical, and quarter flats going too far vertical when they should be working back once they create a redirect. I mentioned that in my feedback. Physiological problems in cover 3 against HB wheel routes. Yep, wheel routes were a bitch in general. Improved underneath the zones dropping logic. I will say that the adjustable zone drop depth coaching adjustment worked really well, but again, in conjunction, it needs to be tied in with defenders being able to break on the ball. If they're not breaking on throws, it makes that feature not worth very much. So I'm curious to see how they improve the zone dropping logic for the default adjustments. Again, there were a lot of issues with vertical hooks and hook to curl zones across the board. And cover 3 and cover 2 coverages will get more upgrades later after launch via title updates. They better, because again, going back to the user defender thing, if we're going to be in a situation where we are pretty much in a situation where we have to be more fundamentally sound in our user defense, play more disciplined, play back to front or deep to short, and our defenders are doing craziness, you're going to have 48 to 45 games every single time out. Because in the beta, I was just completing passes at will, just bink, 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 all the way down the field. Now, I feel like if all this stuff is balanced, it won't be a situation where we're constricting the offense that greatly, because I do feel that receivers are running their routes better, and I felt that was much more clean. But again, you got to have balance with these things. Player switch logic does not feel intuitive. I definitely agreed with that, especially in situations where you switch to make plays, user catching. Film study ability, another polarizing topic. Outside of the feedback around the offensive user, this ability led to the most polarizing topic among our community, and it's exactly the feedback we were looking for. We included this ability in the beta to get a gauge from our players about how this could function in the game. While the film study ability will not be available in the game for launch, we do plan to introduce it later in the year via title update. We are going to continue to iterate, balance, and tune the ability to make it as fair and balanced as possible for all our players before we release it. And all the feedback we got from the community will be extremely helpful towards this iteration. I felt like most people did not like the film study ability. I did not like it either. I think it's silly. If you want players to diagnose plays better, again, why do you have a play rec rating and an awareness rating for? That's something that those ratings should help elite players with good instincts and savviness diagnose plays in a more effective way. I don't like abilities which gives users the ability to see what someone is running, and not just that, to see what adjustments they're making to what they're running. Now, the argument that you hear most often is that, well, people just run the same plays and it'll encourage people to open up their playlists and stop running the same play. I think that is flawed reasoning, And the reason why I believe that to be the case is that there's only so many stuff that there's only so much stuff that you can run. You know, everyone runs their base stuff. And as I've said over and over again, Madden is a scaled down version of a base play game. Now, a lot of that is a function of playbook functionality and gameplay mechanics conspiring to limit what users can run effectively. But really, football is a base play game. You have your base plays and you have your constraints that you run off of that to keep defenses honest when they start overplaying stuff. And really, what teams do is that they run their pet concepts out of a wide variety of looks through motion, through formation shifts, and all of that. We don't have that type of window dressing in Madden. Is what ends up happening is that you have this game which gets rather bland because people use one or two formations which has the formations or the plays and concept that they like that work that enable them to attack what's being done to them, and they tweak off of that. Well, if I'm running an offense, and I run a spread offense in some way, shape, or form, and I run a very, if the defense does this, I do that, box count type of offense. Meaning, if I see single high, I go to my single high beaters or audible to my single high beaters. If I go up, if I'm going up against a lot of too high, same thing. If I'm going up against a lot of light box, I'm running inside zone and zone read. Heavy blitzers, I'm going to my RPO game and what quicks I have. And if you keep on showing me specific looks that leave you vulnerable to what I'm trying to run and you can't stop it, you should not have an ability aid you in stopping it. Stop what I'm doing. I'm not talking about exploiting the game. I'm talking about just running very simple concepts. If I'm running an air raid concept, my offense revolves around mesh, stick, smash, four verts. And I'm going to run those over and over again in some variation. It may be mesh with an out route, might be mesh with a dig or a post, might be a shallow cross tied with a square in and a post corner. But the play, the foundation of the offense is going to be the same. And I'm going to run different variations of those plays in the formations that let me do it. Take the training wheels off and learn how to adjust to what is being done to you. That is how I feel about film study. Instead of having that, have play rec and awareness mean something. I don't like abilities like that. No. What else we got here? Fatigue penalties for scrambling QBs are too severe. I don't agree with that. The feedback on scrambling QBs told us that the countering scrambling QBs felt difficult on defense, but also that the fatigue penalties to out-of-position ball carriers felt too punitive at times. I had more of an issue with the fact that I didn't like how contains were still playing as opposed to this. Decreasing fatigue penalty for simply running with an out-of-position ball carrier but not getting hit. Why? Why? Increasing fatigue penalty when taking hits with an out-of-position ball carrier, more significant when taking hit stick tackles. That makes more sense. But again, if you keep on running around with your quarterback, stamina should play a factor in that. Why shouldn't there not be a stamina penalty just because you're not getting hit? That doesn't make sense. AI pass rush doesn't seem as effective as user pass rush. That was absolutely true. The user pass rush, as predicted, was bananas. I had to slap double teams on people who are using the defensive line or an edge rusher, and that's not a surprise. That did not come as a surprise to me. I was absolutely certain that they were going to do everything in their power to steer people towards at least trying user pass rush, if not doing it full time. And with the abilities that are in the game and also the offensive line abilities to quote unquote counter it, that just leads me to believe that's going to be the case going forward. I believe that user pass rush is going to be very effective all year long. It was a little hard for me to gauge because we did not deal with any pass rush elites in the beta. I did I did feel like the ability pass rushers in the game were not as impactful as they were in Madden 20, but I didn't think that they were overly weak either. I'm more concerned about pass rushers that don't have abilities than I am with pass rushers that do. I felt like um, the ability pass rushers like Shaq Barrett and Calais Campbell, I still felt like they were effective. They weren't just detonating your entire offensive line in a second and a half, which is what pass rush elite players do currently. What do they say here? For to balance this tuning, we also add logic for pass block double team. Utilize the means that double teams. I mean, blah blah blah. That seems like a user thing to me. This means that when rushing against double teams, any memory built up against the rusher to that point in the game will count towards the rusher for both blockers and the double team, making it harder to beat double teams. Okay, that's fine. That makes more sense. So we'll see how that goes. I'm never going to be against tweaking the pass rush to make it more lifelike. I'll always support that. I'll never complain about that at all. It's as long as guys aren't blowing through double teams in 1.5 seconds or beating all pro tackles with instant wins just because they have pass rush elite and my lineman does not have abilities. There's only so many abilities to go around. And if I have an elite or, borderline Pro Bowl caliber and above offensive lineman and he doesn't have a blocking ability, he shouldn't be getting pistol whipped by a guy just because he has pass rush elite or edge rush elite. Pass max throw power, passing feedback, and penalty. When the throw power max is hit by a QB per his throw power rating, we have made a change so that a QB cannot be hit with both an accuracy penalty and a power penalty on the same throw, except on cross-body throws, as this was causing throws to be wildly off target and was confusing the players. We also adapted the passing feedback text to be clear for this specific penalty. So instead of it reading past max throw power, it will now say out of range. This is applied when trying to throw to a receiver who is further downfield than the QB throw power rating can reach. Fine with that. Sometimes the feedback you're getting on inaccurate throws in Madden 20 and also in the beta was not accurate and you weren't quite sure what you were doing wrong or why. Top reported bugs from Madden NFL 21 closed beta. Some of these kind of are head scratching. I didn't see this at all, so I can't say to that. Incorrect player pictures, didn't see that either, but I'm sure it was there. Visors not positioned on helmets correctly, blah blah blah. Some of us focus on different things. I focused more on in-game, bugs and coverage in pass concepts, run concepts, defensive techniques, and all that stuff. I wasn't really focused. Course adjustments reset after every drive, and coverage depth adjustments automatically sets to 0. Yep, did see that. That was an issue. That needs to be fixed also, as it was randomly just resetting. And that was that. Their next Gridiron Notes will be on Friday, July 31st, which will focus on X Factor and Superstar abilities for Madden NFL 21. And again, like they said before, they're going to do one for franchise in the middle of August. So next up are these wonderful X Factor and Superstar abilities, and we'll go over that and see what's coming and predict what's going to be overpowered and what's going to be useful and which ones will suck. It'll be a mixed bag of tricks like they were, this year. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. I just think that there's a better way to do it. I think going towards more a tiered type structure like the NBA 2K badge system where you have different levels of an ability would be better. I mean, I get it, and I do think it does make guys stand out, but again, it doesn't always translate as well as it should, and it sometimes leads to cartoonish consequences. But, that is that. That pretty much covers it. I would love to hear what you guys think, and I will talk to you all later. Peace.